I'm delighted to welcome on behalf of DURA and the University of Dundee and the Dundee Literary Festival the wonderful Kevin Barry, author of City of Bohan, Dark Lines the Isle and several short story collections. So Kevin, thanks for coming to Dundee, we're delighted to have you. So on a regular writing day, what do you get inspired by the most?
Oh, wow. I tend to, I have a very good tip actually. I tend to finish my writing day mid-sentence, about halfway through a sentence, just to let me get back in easily the next morning. It's a really difficult discipline to try and get to the desk without going online, or without phoning friends, or without going reading the newspaper or anything like that. I find if I can make the time between bed and desk really quick and get there very quickly, it's a great help for my writing day. I can get into that murky subconscious back of the brain place where fiction comes from, and try and access that first thing in the morning, because it's very close, I think, to the place you are when you're dreaming as well. If writing is close to anything in life, it's close to dreaming, and that first thing in the morning is a really good space to be in for a writer, I think, and just try and get to the desk. And what I try to do really is I try not to wake up too quickly, because when you're kind of half asleep, you're not afraid to embarrass yourself on the page, and that's when you get the good stuff. When you're not trying to sound cool and you're not trying to sound impressive, you're just trying to blurt it all out and drooling it onto the page, and you can always go back and cut and shape and edit later, which is the fun part. But yeah, I just try and get to the desk as quick as I can, and just not be afraid to kind of embarrass myself. I don't mind what the prose looks like. I don't worry about the grammar, the spelling, anything. I just want to get a good body of words down there that I can go back and cut and work with later.
So you're both fearless first thing in the morning?
I think so. Yeah, Don DeLillo, the great American writer, says you're still puddled in dream melt, which is a really nice way of doing it. You're in touch with that subconscious world, I guess, which is the fundamental place for writers, where you need to be to get out to work.
So if you write something that scares you, first thing in the morning, do you leave it in? You think, well, that was the most raw that I've done?
Yeah, it's very unpredictable. I mean, a good morning's work, I might get 300 or 400 words down the page, and I don't even try anymore to write in the afternoons. It doesn't work for me. But I'll maybe come back in the early evening, and I'll look, and maybe I'll cut all of that 300 or 400 words again in the evening, or maybe just a few things in there. It's all the great writing cliches are untrue, except for the one about time, about leaving the work in the drawer for a while and figuring out, is it any good after a few weeks or a few months. That sort of seasoning period is critical. There's kind of, I call it a glow of completion. When you finish something, you immediately go, this is wonderful stuff. I've moved the whole short story form forwards or whatever, So it's a very good idea to put it into the drawer for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. The longer the better. 6 or 8 weeks is good, I think. And when you come back to it, then you can tell very quickly whether it's good or bad. You can feel the heat in the story if it's there. But yeah, it's an unpredictable process, I think.
When was that moment, in your life where you felt writing through me, like the eureka moment where you said, "This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's all going to pan out"?
Yeah, like in my early 20s, mid-20s, I was writing, but in quite an undisciplined way. My day job, I was working as a freelance journalist, so I was doing bits of journalism. You're using a lot of the same muscles, but I knew I wasn't accessing parts of my murky subconscious that I wanted to. I wanted to write fiction. But it was undisciplined my way of going at it. I would very often write at 4 in the morning, having crawled home from a nightclub or something like that, and the words would seem like genius at the time, but they would very rarely stand up to the light of day. Late 20s, I became more dedicated to it. I think there's always, for almost all writers, there is a moment you can remember where you suddenly got serious. And I remember an August day in, I think, 1999, when I was kind of walking by the sea in the west of Ireland, and I remember saying to myself, I'm going to do this. I'd had sort of my first experience of attempting a novel that I knew was terrible even before I finished it, but I knew it taught me that I could get a novel-shaped thing together relatively quickly, and I thought, I'm going to stick at this. I'm going to put in the work that's necessary. And it was quite a belated discovery to be in your late 20s when you realise, in fact, no matter how much talent you have or ability, the fundamental thing is an enormous amount of work is required. You have to write out all of your influences, and that takes years. You have to go through all those great writers you wanted to be. You have to write you're going to write a novel that sounds like Cormac McCarthy. You're attempting a novel that sounds like Dundee or whatever. You just have to write through all of that, and I guess a mistake I made, I think, in my 20s was I read very narrowly. I had 3 or 4 novels that I loved, and you end up aping them and imitating them too much. I think it's a really good idea to read as broadly as you can, all different sorts of stuff, comic books, and read film scripts and read plays, and let them all mangle in together and enmesh, and maybe you'll get your own voice out of a whole mix of things, But it's books are made out of books, somebody said once. I think Cormac McCarthy said that. And the fundamental thing, if you're going to write, is to read a lot. It's to read a great deal, and never be guilty about time spent reading.
You started going into plays with RTE, and you mentioned earlier that you were also working on a graphic as well. Do you find, are you using the same writing muscles, or are you learning new ways of expression with new mediums?
It's really, really fascinating, actually, when you're writing in one form, how it'll actually improve you in another place. I found that I read a great thing actually once that Gore Vidal said, a great American essayist. He was asked where his really enviable essay style came from. Brilliant style, it gets you straight away on the page. And he said that comes from writing stage plays in the early 60s. I discovered that the essay was, in a sense, a kind of a dramatic monologue. And if you think about it like that, and I found actually, I was involved in doing a graphic story with a Spanish artist. He was doing the pictures, I was doing the words. And I think that taught me a great deal about narrative, about how much of a spine you need, a narrative spine you need, sometimes how little to drag the reader along through the pages. So in unpredictable ways, working in one form will improve you in another. And it's a really good, I think writers get caught into a rut where they just, I just write science fiction stories, or I just do historical fiction. And it can be a really good idea to try lots of different things. You could be the greatest sci-fi writer that ever was, you just don't know it yet because you haven't tried. Or you might be a really good social realist story writer, it's just try all sorts of things and mix it up and see what happens.
In City of Bohan, there's a lot of world building went on in there, and the language, it's not like you practically invented your own, but you drew on other elements of Ireland and your background. Was it a love of the language or just the love of creating your own world that drove you on?
Yeah, writers can actually circle around home for years and years before they start writing close in about their own experience. And City of Bohan comes primarily out of growing up in Limerick and Cork and hearing the English language as it's wonderfully abused and misused in these places, and it's a really good resource to have as a writer, because that kind of working class speech in places like Limerick and Cork has never showed up in our literature much in Ireland, because those communities weren't in the way of producing books. So when I started writing City of Bohan, I felt, God, this is pretty fresh. This is a pretty fresh mode of expression, and there's lots of possibilities with this. I really enjoyed the world building element of it. I got carried away probably with building the city and describing the streets, but it struck me quickly. I thought that the city worked as a place because I started to have dreams set out there. Very quickly, as I was writing, really violent, horrible dreams that I was waking up in a nervous sweat from. But it was, I could see the streets, and it like if you were to journey to Bohan, you would feel like you were in a kind of vaguely familiar West of Ireland city, but there would be something slightly off, something slightly other. It's kind of an alternative universe going on alongside ours. So that's a great liberating thing for a writer to discover that you're not doing realism here, and you can invent at will, and you can make it all up at the top of your head, and no research required. Just sit down and go mad on the page.
If you're given the opportunity to adapt any of your work to film or television or even stage, would you want to do it yourself, or would you trust somebody else to?
With City of Bohan?
Yeah.
I've written two drafts of the screenplay because I was optioned by a film company even before the book came out.
Fantastic.
And I think the latest now is it's been developed more as a TV project. I could absolutely see that working. Whether I'd want to be involved in all those scripts, I don't know. It has a very peculiar, the dialogue it's very much its own thing. And I would like to kind of oversee the dialogue as much as possible. But But yeah, I don't know, when the option came up for us to the film company bought it, I thought, no, move on from that, you know, do something else and just sign over the rights to it and take the money and run. But then when they started mentioning various screenwriters and so forth, I thought, oh no, this is my baby. I have to do this. Yeah, it can be hard to let go, I think,
Yeah.
with something like this. But it's yeah, it steals so much actually from TV shows that it's only natural that it should probably be developed.
A circular
A circular
feedback into itself.
route. Yeah.
I think you also won the Impact Award from Dublin, and also your short stories in Dark Lines the Ale as well, won a few awards too. What kind of does it change the way your work is perceived? Does it actually spur you on as well when you get these prizes?
Oh, it definitely gives you confidence. Yeah. I think every writer has confidence anyway. You wouldn't do it if you didn't have some inherent confidence that you have something to say, or that you have some stories to tell, or you have a mode of expression that you want to be heard and read. But yeah, it's a great boost, and when there is cash attached to prizes, it's all the better. There's nothing not to love about winning prizes, you know.
True.
People giving you money and saying, "Oh, you're a great writer," and it's lovely. yeah, I'm all for it. I think what you have to remind yourself all the time is that there are going to be good years and very lean years as a writer, years where very little is happening, and the phone isn't ringing and emails aren't coming in, and it's just you and the work and the desk, and that's the more normal writer's year. And you just enjoy the fun times if and when they come, you know. But it's important to kind of keep yourself tethered down as well. But yeah, they definitely boost confidence and give you a little surge.
It's really good advice about grounding yourself, and good to say that all writers need to have confidence. Were you always confident you'd be where you are now?
I always felt I would be published. For sure. You know, as is common with lots of novelists, the first published novel isn't the first novel you attempted, and the first novel you wrote, City of Bohan, was my first published novel, and it was the fourth novel that I wrote. The first one I mentioned previously, I never let out of the house. The second one wasn't very good. The third one came very close to being published, and I think I kind of knew I was a pro after that when they said, "Oh, let's see the next thing." I said, "Okay, I'm going to go and do another." You know, I think I knew at that stage, okay, you're a professional now. But the first morning I sat down and started writing City of Bohan, and I knew at once it would be published, because it just felt right, and it felt like it was the project that should be on my desk at this particular time. I've read enough graphic novels, I've seen enough TV shows like Deadwood and The Wire, I've read enough Irish literature, I've seen enough cowboy movies, all those influences are there and ready to go. Now's the time, and it turns out to be one of the most fundamental things in your life as a writer is picking the project that should be on your desk at a certain time, you know. Very often I think when you start off trying to write novels, you're maybe trying to write a novel that you're 10, 15, 20 years away from being able to do. That was certainly the case with me. And I was trying to recognise what's the one that has really heat for me now, and that I feel a real urgency and a draw towards.
Recently, thing with Canongate in Edinburgh for your latest book. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, it's great. I lived in Edinburgh for 3 years, about 100 yards from my first address from the Canongate office, so it's really nice to be in a circular motion now and going back to a wonderful Scottish publisher. It's for 3 books. There's going to be a book of stories, there's going to be a second City of Bohan novel, but the first book from the arrangement is coming in about a year's time, and it's a novel called Beetlebone, set in the west of Ireland, and it involves a tiny island out there that was owned by John Lennon. And that's all I'm saying for now. I'm going to keep it all strictly under wraps until it appears. But it's been a long project for a very short book. Actually, I've been 3 years on it, and it took a lot of work to get the voice right for it. But I think it's nearly there now, so I'm really looking forward to having it come out next year.
Oh, fantastic. Lastly, probably the question that every writer gets asked, and you've covered it before as well, but what advice do you give to new and aspiring writers?
Yeah, I mean, a very important fundamental one I think is finish everything you start. Finish every story you start, even if you know as you're writing it that it's crap, finish it. Because that gives you a kind of a pride in your craft, and if you finish the bad ones, it'll help you finish the good ones when those come along. So a really fundamental thing is to finish every story. And I tried loads of short stories, and very few of them are ever let out of the house. I probably write 10 or 12 a year, and of that, 1 or 2 will be shown anywhere, because I know myself that they're not good enough, but I would finish them all, and I think it's what helps you get the good ones when they come. If you finish everything else on your desk, that's when you're being a professional about it. The other thing, I guess, is write a lot and read a lot. You're going to cut so much stuff. The next novel I have at the moment is about 48,000, 50,000 words, short novel. I've probably written 220,000 words for it. Just cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. It's like the old thing, like the sculptor needs a block of stone, you know, to cut at and find the shape that's in there for the finished piece of art. And it's like that, you're going to have to write a great deal that you will cut and throw away. And that old hoary advice about killing your darlings is also, it usually works. That sentence that's so beautiful, you can't cut it. Cut it, and the weird thing is, immediately as soon as it's cut, you won't miss it at all. It's fine, and it might solve the problem in your story. But read a lot, and write a lot, and finish everything you start.
Fantastic. Kevin Barry, thank you very much indeed on behalf of the University of Dundee. That's been fabulous. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Pleasure, David. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sian.